everybody. I'm just waiting for Rosen. This is Purely OCD. One second. I'm trying to accept Lauren.
Hi,
There she is.
there I am, and there you are, and here we are.
Here we are. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, and to everyone who's joining us. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for
this episode of
joining.
Purely OCD. So we're here today to talk to you about overt compulsions. We did several episodes, probably several months ago now, on mental compulsions, and seemed only reasonable that we should cover their overt counterparts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think your audio's off. It could be me, but
is it any better now?
Yes.
Oh dear. Okay. Hold.
It's just staticky. It could just be me.
Is it still staticky?
Sounds like you're underwater a little bit.
Oh, that's no good. No good?
Oh. It's better now.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I love our technical glitches. It's always a good time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't sound underwater.
It got better.
Great. So overt compulsions.
Yeah. A few episodes back, we went over mental compulsions. So I think we both agreed it's worth going over kind of these very overt ones, the ones that are observable that people can see versus in your noggin.
Some of them
old noodle.
Some of them live up here, some of them live out here, but they're all compulsions. Yep. Good times. Good times.
Really, really are.
Yep. So where should we begin? I mean, there's so many to choose from.
Yes. And just as a quick reminder, if this is the first time you guys are watching this, and if this is a returning thing, I'm sorry if this is on repetition, but compulsions are the bad guys, right? So if we can remove the compulsions, we're in really good business.
That's the stuff. That's the stuff that we want to see. Yeah. So to that end, actually I'm glad that you kind of went back to basics. I had somebody actually reach out on our Instagram channel saying, what's ERP? And I was like, oh, it's hard because you can't necessarily go through it every single episode, but obviously like some other elements, right? Like the compulsions are done to eradicate uncertainty and anxiety in OCD. So let's take an example, right? You have an obsession pop in your mind that somebody might break into your home in the middle of the night.
Ooh, scary one.
Yes, it is scary.
So scary.
Obsessions are always scary. That's kind of their deal. And so you have this obsession pop in and you're like, well, I feel anxious now. What should I do? And you might be tempted to go check the door again, right? You might want to check the lock on the door, or perhaps the lock on the windows, or to make sure the windows are closed in your home.
Or maybe redo them a few times.
Yeah.
Or ask for reassurance. Do you think this is locked? Or have someone else lock it for you. Because then your responsibility is.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it's like, oh, well, if it happens, it's not my fault that everyone died.
Yeah.
So, oh, well, right? It's so funny, too, because obviously nobody with OCD is like, oh, well, but it does that fear. Sometimes people have that core fear that I'm going to be responsible for other people's harm. Sometimes it's I'm afraid that I'm going to die, right? So it's different for everybody, but the behaviors look like locking and relocking and relocking and staring at the lock, or doing it a certain number of times until it feels just right. So,
right.
But obviously that's only one of so many. So what other overt compulsions have you seen recently?
Oh, I thought you were going to go into ERP because you had led with that.
Oh, that was confusing of me. No, I just
no, I think it was confusing on my part. But
I
so,
meant that
yes,
having a little backstory was important.
Yeah. I got it now.
Yeah.
That's my bad.
No.
Counting, like Lauren is saying, is a big one. It can be either in our head or it can be out loud, mm-hmm. right? Or repeating something over and over. You could be like repeating a person's name. You can be looking at things in a certain direction, right? Like I have to look from left to right, or I have to look in a box.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's also tapping.
Tapping.
So which goes into the counting. So if I have a thought like, oh my gosh, my mother might die, right?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. You might do it on you might do it on your hand. You might do like I've worked with people who tap the walls, right, and have to tap the walls a certain amount of times, and it like has to be even or odd. To your point, like about the counting that goes with it, which is sometimes more of mental. Obviously, yeah, they all go together.
Right, or like you have to breathe so many times, like I mean, really, you can see the compulsions are so endless.
Totally.
They really are. There's washing, mm-hmm. right, and it's not always related to contamination, folks. So keep that in mind. It could be I had a bad thought and I have to wash my hands.
I was gonna say it's not necessarily like substance contamination, but oftentimes will fall into a category of like emotional contamination or like within just right, or maybe even within like religious scrupulosity, right? If you have sex and there's fear about that making you impure somehow, that you might find yourself bathing excessively in the aftermath of that. So yeah, there's lots of ways that bathing and washing can come up.
Right, like washing your feet excessively too with the religious stuff I've seen.
Yeah.
Also around, I mean, I don't know how deep we want to get here with washing, but it goes deep. Excessive showering, right? That can last for a couple hours at a time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we want to, I don't know if we have time or if we even want to, maybe we can do it next time, but talking about ways to combat those types of compulsions. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, maybe we have time.
The future.
Well, we might have time. One of the things that I wanted to say, though, jumping off of what you were just saying about showering and also hand washing, is that sometimes it can just be duration. That being said, sometimes there are pretty extensive rituals that go with that process. So sometimes a person might have to, wash their hands and then wash underneath their nails and then, right, like, and so on and so forth. It
and rinse
rather
between each, like, pump of soap or,
that.
Or washing their hands after they've done one section of their body.
Yep.
Or it can be, we don't wash all day and then we do this massive wash at the end of the day to kind of clear the space. It's like this safety.
Before getting into bed, for instance, right? That's oftentimes like sort of a safe space for people so they can be contaminated in other realms. But like, no, this is the sacred space.
Oh, right? Yeah. For OCD, definitely the bed.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Really common.
Truth.
What else?
Well, I think, you nodded toward reassurance seeking earlier, which is more observable, and that can take so many different forms, whether confessing something. So we see this a lot as therapists too. Like, I'm just going to say this thing out loud, and if my therapist doesn't really respond, then I'm probably okay, right? Like, then it's probably fine. It can happen. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with telling your therapist about, what's going on in your life. It's just when it becomes redundant, repetitive, it's something that we're on the lookout for.
What reassurance isn't compulsive until it's compulsive.
Right. Which is essentially meaning repetitive, excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and so it could be confessing, it could be blatantly saying like, well, what do you think?
Yeah. It could be
nonchalantly.
Google. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Google.
Well, right. Never mind. I got, so reassurance, starting over. I lost what I was going to say. Good. I swear I have COVID brain. It's real.
I have, I'm not sure that my brain is like exponentially decreasing in its capacity.
It's glitching
by the day. Anyway. So
good
reassurance
times.
Seeking. Yep.
I figured it out. It's that it's very sneaky. It's so sneaky that even a therapist can sometimes be like, I just ended session. Did they just ask for reassurance? And I didn't even get it. That happens once in a while. So it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'll be like, why are we asking that?
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, shoot. Because sometimes you don't even know, you're just so in the moment of
you're in it. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it brings up a good point. Earlier, you were talking about accommodation, right? And especially with the physical checks, I'm going to have somebody else check the front door for me because I don't it's too much for me to do it again, or I'm going to get stuck doing it. I think the same thing, obviously with reassurance seeking, it's if your, partner or your friend or your parent doesn't have information about how to navigate OCD effectively, they might unknowingly be sort of feeding into the cycle. That being said, while people can get support around this by sort of informing their loved ones, hey, this is something I do. If you see me kind of doing it, can you ask whether or not you think I'm doing it and kind of call it out? But sometimes a lot of it has to be on the person, right? A lot of it has to be on, you know what? Don't answer that question. And gaining that kind of insight into your own experience, because it's hard to see it sometimes.
Yeah. It's definitely hard. I guess that kind of jumps off to the avoidance piece, right? Is that's kind of avoiding doing certain compulsions. So they, might ask somebody else to, or just avoiding in general.
Right.
So it could be I'm just going to avoid locking the door at all. I'm not even going to get stuck. I'll just have my husband do it. Or I'm going to avoid all sharp objects.
Period. Or I'm just going to avoid driving because I'm afraid that when I get in the car, I'm going to have thoughts that I ran over someone and I'm going to get stuck having to go back over and over and over again. So I'm just going to stop driving.
Right. I'm going to avoid watching certain shows because they might trigger me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lots and lots and lots of creative ways to avoid that are potentially the most blatant ways in which one's life gets limited by this disorder.
I'm going to avoid going to the doctor. It's always a fun one.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Never. It seems like there's never an in-between either, is there? It's either, and for those watching, when we diagnose illness anxiety disorder, lots and lots of overlap with OCD, that we have to diagnose it as either care seeking or care avoidant, right? So it's either I'm calling my doctor all the time over and over and over again to make sure, or I'm constantly going to the doctor to get checkups, or on the other hand, I'm going to completely ignore and avoid it and just try and pretend that something is not happening.
I usually do that one. I just don't want to know. I'm just kidding. Kind of joking. Another one. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that even if you don't want to know, you the difference in recovery, right, is that you go and find out anyway.
I know it doesn't make you not have whatever it is you got.
Well, that's for sure.
You just don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's this sweet spot, this middle ground where it's okay, well, it's time to go get this checked out, and then if you want to call 5 times to review your results, it's okay, I reviewed them the once, and maybe I don't need to call 3 more times.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. And Another one could be it's gone again.
Oh, man.
God, good Lord,
Brains.
help me. Oh, man.
Hello, Kelley.
It is like on today.
You could start having anxiety that maybe you're like losing your mind slowly.
Yeah, that'd be good. I already know that I kind of am deteriorating at this point.
It's okay.
Because I'm getting older. Can't stop time.
Same.
It's coming for you no matter.
Every second, man.
Mm-hmm. The Reaper.
Yeah.
Don't be.
Oh my God, I was just thinking that. I got a fever, baby. Okay, actually, this is a random side note. I'm really taking us off the rails. But actual fact, up until 2022, Kelley Franke had not seen the Blue Oyster Cult SNL skit. I had the great privilege of introducing it to her.
The cowbell.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. As we go into aging, I will think of Will Ferrell, just really going after it. Yeah.
I'm going to add that to my playlist. I have a YouTube playlist of funny clips that, like, no matter what, they will make me laugh. When I'm having a bad day, I will from time to time
Will Ferrell dancing is like, yeah.
Well,
like
everyone cracking up in the background is what kills me. It's just so good.
It's so true. The cock of the walk, baby. Just like the whole thing. Anyway, the point. Can we tie in Will Ferrell and the cowbell to OCD somehow and overt compulsion?
Yeah, just like so obnoxious.
Oh, well, that's
in your face.
That's right. So good. Mm-hmm.
Aggressive.
It's very aggressive. Like bam, bam. Like don't forget about me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of there's just so many. There could be visually, if we're looking kind of on health stuff, like visually checking your body for things, scanning things. It could be like going to get checked for an STD or HIV is a big one for OCD.
A huge one. Yeah.
Avoiding anything that's red.
Oh yeah. Or blood, I was going to say, or with some contamination concerns and even the disgust factor, it's like avoiding anything that's brown, right?
Yes.
Like, because that could be fecal matter, right? Like, can't have that.
It's the poop show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any bodily fluids.
I think also, to your point earlier, like checking in the mirror to see like, oh, are my eyes yellow? Am I getting jaundiced? Or jaundice, whatever.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of ways in which we can observe somebody mid-compulsion. Although, interestingly enough, back to what we were saying at the beginning, it may not tell the whole story, right? Like you may see somebody tapping, you may not hear that they're reciting a prayer in their mind at the same time over and over again.
They're not exclusive to one another.
Exactly. So in terms of, and not that I want to pay the short shrift because I know we only have a little under 10 minutes left, but do we want to talk about how to navigate at least a couple of these?
Sure. Where do we start with that one? Do you want to go with hand washing or?
Yeah, let's just pick an example and sort of walk through, I think, like how we might, like.
Let's do what if somebody breaks in my house tonight? Because you already set us up.
Yeah.
You got the layup here.
That's fair. So if somebody has that concern, I'll pose this to you. Somebody walks into your office and you've done an assessment with them and they're like, this is the primary way in which my OCD shows up. I'm spending a ton of time every day checking the door locks over and over again. Super distressing. How do I work on this through ERP?
Mm-hmm. Well, are we doing exposures are we doing exposures and response, or are we just doing the response?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just like really broadly, we would want to bring up the anxiety. So like, oh, there's that thought. So we can write a story about it, right? Do an imaginal. So you're writing this narrative of it's all going bad. You can even put in the story. And my OCD therapist told me this is OCD and told me not to check the locks, and I didn't. And because I didn't, the person broke in
and
last
everybody.
night.
Yeah.
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 Right. So
yeah,
this is my
sure.
ghost reading this story now. So that's my initial thought.
Yeah.
And the response prevention would be, when you're reading this story, you're not mentally compulsing. You're sitting with the uncomfortable feeling that maybe, and you're not going to then do any compulsions following that up. Because if there's like this bulge of like, now I have a ton of anxiety and I have to release it by doing a ton more compulsions, then we've gone off the map.
Yeah, that's no good. Yeah, and I think in terms of where, in addition to like the question of an imaginal bringing up the anxiety, even just locking the door itself is an exposure, right? So let's say
like maybe it's not locked. Goodbye.
Right. But I mean, like, it triggers, right? Like you go to lock the door in the evening. First of all, you may be avoiding that because you've farmed it off to a family member. Like, I'm not doing this. And so like, here you go. So maybe you take that on. Maybe you become the designated door locker of your household, right? And perhaps we look at the amount of times, and this is where the response prevention piece comes in, like the number of times that you might want to check. And so you're the person who does the locking, and you limit checks to, I don't know, 3 times. No more than 3 times are you allowed to click the lock at first. And
I would even say, let's delay it first. Let's lock it. You feel the urge to come back to do an extra click, and I'll say, okay, walk away though for at least 5 minutes. And if you still have the urge, then you can do that second check.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's all down to people's willingness, like we've said before on here, right? It's like, we start where people are willing to start.
That's
a matter of like slowly chipping away at the compulsions, because they're the things that are impacting your life. They're the bad guys, as Kelley was saying earlier. So whether that's delaying, whether that's reducing the number of compulsions that you're performing secondary to doing this task that is triggering, that brings up all these thoughts like, oh my gosh, but what if I didn't actually lock it and everyone gets murdered tonight? And to your point earlier, you can also bring along an imaginal exposure, and you can do them in tandem, right? You could be listening to an imaginal exposure. This is a little bit more advanced, but you might be listening to imaginal exposure as you're doing the in vivo exposure of locking the door, right? So you're doing the single lock, you're listening to a story about how you might not have really locked it, and you're accepting and tolerating the feelings that are coming up instead of trying to resolve the uncertainty about whether or not you actually did lock that door.
You probably didn't lock it.
You may not have, right?
That's also sometimes with that, it's like I have to hear it or I have to feel it click a perfect way. Then I'll know. So it could be like, okay, I want you to be talking to your family while you're doing it. Be distracted.
Yep.
While you're doing it. There's so many avenues you can take. So it's hard to just give just like, oh, this is what you should do, right? So what Lauren and I are talking about when she's talking about willingness and meeting where people are at is that everybody's different. So our approach is going to be very different depending on what a person is willing to do in that moment. For some people, delaying is like they might as well just leave the door unlocked, so it's very unique to everybody.
Yep, it sure is. It's very, very unique to each individual and dependent upon what they're actually afraid of, right? I keep saying, like, maybe everybody dies. But again, even that could be broken down into maybe everyone dies and it's my fault, or maybe I die. And
leave my kids motherless.
Right. Or it could be, I don't want to leave the door unlocked because all of my house could get ransacked and I'd be penniless, right? Like that, it's not always the same fear, even if the observable compulsive behaviors around it are the same. And so we have to target that because we have to target that trigger so you can learn to be in the presence of those thoughts without taking the bait, without doing the compulsion.
You got it, buddy.
You got it, buddy. Well, and on that note, I realize
And that
we're coming to the close of our time today.
we are.
But we will be seeing it back, I think next week, maybe.
Yes.
And as always, feel free to, reach out if you have any topics you'd like to see us cover. Obviously, do you know this is our 61st episode? Which is weird.
Oh, happy 61st. I don't know.
Oh my God, it's a milestone. I love it.
I like how I missed 60. That's great.
I also did too.
And also Lauren started a Purely OCD Instagram page.
I did, yeah. So
go
we've got
check
the
that out.
Purely OCD Instagram page. We're on Twitter now. We also have a TikTok account, if you can believe it.
Oh,
I know.
Someone's been busy.
Somebody has been busy. So you can go ahead and check us out on any of those platforms, as well as the podcast apps as well. Mostly it's little clips from the different episodes that we'll be sharing on those platforms, and hopefully, engaging the community somehow, like having it be an opening for some conversation around some of these topics that we're talking about, because obviously we are mostly hearing ourselves talk about it. Want to hear from you. So cool.
Okay, you guys are the best. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.